I just took part in the most epic, over-the-top, bombastic 25-minute boss fight that I have ever seen committed to video games. I also got an epic sword upgrade that I replaced after 2 cutscenes without ever swinging it. Let's talk about FF16. We're about 40 hours into the game now, which I would put us about midway, maybe into 2/3 of the game complete. We're certainly not at the finish point yet. And we've done so many things. And what I haven't done is checked other people's discussions on Final Fantasy 16. I've kept it to my own opinions, but unavoidably, I see people talking about it all the time in my stream chat, talking about like online reviews. Some people are giving it like 6 out of 10, and people getting upset because it should be a 10 out of 10. All these kind of things going on. So I'm going to look at it from my, as close to possible, unbiased view of what I'm experienced through FF16, at least by the midway point. Story-wise, chef's kiss. The actual main story I am fully immersed in. And when we get to the spoilers that we're going to do in like our big summary video of it, I can't wait to talk about what mainly the big standout feature to me is the most adult, concise, proper relationship, a certainly romantic relationship, that I have ever seen in a video game. Genuinely speaking, after playing a lot of the single-player Final Fantasies and actually having a big problem with the protagonist and how they go about creating romance in there, which generally is like really creepy in a lot of ways and would not fly. It's only been a year since I got it. Are you even listening to me? No way! This is outrageous! This is... Maybe he's gay! Maybe that's the twist! FF16 does it in a way which, like, this makes total sense to me. And I've also seen a lot of people upset by it. It's like, oh, I just kind of want booba. Like, well, why are they just not, like, getting it on and having sex and stuff? And it's like, that's not what would happen in a real relationship. That's not what would go down, especially given what the characters have gone through, is it wouldn't happen that way. And the game has reflected that point for point, including my predictions of what would happen with a real relationship. And it very much reminds me of my relationship with my wife. Like, really closely. It's a little eerie at times. The way they talk to each other, the way they support each other, the way they're thinking about each other, absolutely reminds me of the relationship I have with my wife. And I find it so, so good compared to what we've had in the past. Including that is the other stories that are going on with this massive, massive world. Absolutely incredible. Like, the main story, or we'll call it the MSQ going forward for our FF14 fans, which means main story quest, is something I can't get enough of. I want more and more and more and more of it. Superb. Absolutely superb. The same can be said for the combat. As an action game fan, I'm a huge, huge fan of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. I've played it multiple times on stream. People know I'm a huge fan of that. I haven't played the Devil May Cry series. I've touched it a little bit, but I haven't got into it. But the combat, as I said in the first video, after the first 9 hours, it just gets better and better and better. And that continues to be the case. Unlocking more and more abilities all the time, and then giving you the resources and the points to really start messing around with it and mixing and matching it into different ways. You can utilize the icons, which is not a spoiler, this is all big part of the marketing for this game, into your abilities, but then later on you can be like, okay, well, I love this ability that this icon gives me, but I don't really like the other resources that icon gives me, so I can borrow them and I can move them into other icons, so I can really customize and make a play style that suits how I like to play. And that's brilliant. That's absolutely fantastic. And the fact that it is free respecs, like you can try it out and really refine your build however you want it to be. And then later on, they just give you more stuff. It's like, okay, well, this shakes up my build again. Now I can mess with it even more. Do I want this ability? Perhaps I don't like this ability, even though it's good, because I personally feel it doesn't suit my very fast-paced playstyle. I like to play very aggressively. And if I've got an ability that has like a wind-up or a charge, that kind of slows me down and takes me out of it a little bit, despite the fact that it's got some gameplay elements mixed in. Those two elements are the standout pros of FF16. And this is where it gets changed, a little change of pace now, because if I was to pull out arbitrary numbers out of my arse, I would say in the development of Final Fantasy 16, 90% of the resources went into the combat and the main story quest. That was it. That was 90% of the resources. The remaining 10% went to everything else, and it really shows. And its downfall. And I would say this is a game of massive high highs, like ludicrously high highs, but the lows are just like, why? And I do feel like a lot of these elements exist because it's a Final Fantasy game and they should have these things. And that's kind of how they've put them in there. It's like, well, we can't really do a Final Fantasy game without X and Y. So we need to put X and Y in there, but it's really not what this game is about. This game is about taking you along for a journey that is exceptionally well crafted. It's what they want you to experience, and they believe wholeheartedly you're going to enjoy that experience. So they focused heavily into that. So the low lows, which really, in my opinion, take away from the game. They actually actively make the game worse. Let's talk about the gearing process. The gearing process is exceptionally arbitrary. There's like 4 stats in the game. It's attack, defense, HP, dagger. That's about it. There's like 4 stats, and you can't really control them. And that's because they want this really well-crafted story, and they want you to experience it in a certain way. So they're actively time-gating resources and power increments. So that every time you do sort of a little bit of story, then they'll give you a couple of upgrades. But it's probably going to be something like 5 more attack, 5 more defense, 5 more HP. And that's it. And then they're going to lock you off. You can't get any more. No. You can't get any more. Then you're not until you progress more in the story, and then we'll unlock another upgrade for you, which will be another 5 attack, another 5 defense, another 5 HP. And it's paced extraordinarily badly. Extraordinarily badly. Like I said, it was already annoying that I could essentially upgrade my weapons after every quest so that the weapons meant nothing, even though I was getting epic upgrades from defeating very, not challenging, but like exceptional bosses, like main big bosses. Gives you an item which will give you a bigger weapon upgrade, but it's just 5 more attack in most cases, and it's like, okay, I don't really feel connected to this because ultimately, and as it did happen to me in the story, I killed a major boss character, I got the item, I went to the blacksmith, I got my brand new weapon, like this epic sword, and then I did that as soon as I arrived in our base. Then I went and talked to a couple of NPCs to get the story going for the next section after this big moment, and the blacksmith upgraded again and was like, okay, you can build a new sword, which is better than the epic upgrade you just got. You can now make you a Giga Sword. I bet. If I craft Excalibur, right, and then in 2 cutscenes time, it's replaced, I've got to be pissed. I've got to be so mad. I swear to God.
So what do I owe the honor? Not saying fortune, do you?
I can make it. I've already got a fucking upgrade. It's not even worth crafting. It's literally not even worth crafting. Can you fucking make this game up in any fucking way? It's not even worth crafting. And there's just too many of them. There's so many weapons, especially with the refining system, which just upgrades them to +2, which then just dies off. It's a very formulaic. You get a new sword, upgrade it to +2, then new sword unlocks, upgrade to +2, new sword unlocks, an epic one that doesn't upgrade, then there's another one, then that goes to +2. And it just happens all the time, and therefore it's not interesting, it's not fun. I'm not making any gearing choices like I would make in any of the other FFs I've played, including Final Fantasy VII Remake, where I can mess around with the materia to suit my characters, especially because there's no party in this game. I can't outfit my supporting players to enhance them into a way that I don't like, right? So what I typically do in my Final Fantasy games is I outfit my main character with my personal favorite playstyle. So if I'm playing Cloud in FF7 Remake, I make him very melee heavy. I don't really want to be casting spells with him. I find it a bit too slow, so I make him like a melee beast. But I still want the ability to have spells, obviously. So I'm going to maybe take Aerith, and I'm going to make Aerith into a caster, or I'm going to make Tifa into something else. I'm going to make Barret into my caster, which is what I've done in the past. I like Tifa's playstyle exceptionally. She plays like a monk. She's super fast-paced. I want that as melee. Barret, I love Barret as a ranged character, but I need a spellcaster, so I'm going to make that into Barret and then figure that out. You can't do that in 16. It's just no customization that like that exists outside of your own melee-focused abilities, essentially. And your supporting party characters are essentially just NPCs that just follow you around. You can control one of the characters a little bit with some very simple abilities, but it's more about just making your own character one specific side of way, which is what takes away from the RPG element for a lot of people. And of course, the loss of materia in general is a big deal. So the entire gearing / crafting process is awful. And this plays out into the exploration of the world. There are some maps which are huge. I mean, the game is very linear, but you'll go into some maps and they're enormous. There's so much to explore. But it's hardly worthwhile because, one, the items are visible from very far away because they're a big blue sparkle. And 9 times out of 10, it's just crafting materials, of which don't particularly mean anything because you either have them or you don't. And you can also buy them from a vendor if you want to do that as well. So it's like exploring is not worth it. And it also highlights that the entire maps are built around things like bounties. Bounties are a system that unlocked for me about 12 hours in, where there's a bounty board of bigger boss monsters that are out in the world. I was like, oh, cool. This is where we're going to lead to fighting super bosses. And they give them a rank from C all the way to S is where I'm up to so far. So more difficult. They give a huge amount of gil to go and do. But what you'll find when you're doing exploration is you'll just wander into an area which is just a giant circle that's closed off from everything. It's a boss arena. And they're all over the place. And you're like, oh, there's going to be a bounty here later. That's what this is for. And it doesn't add anything to the world. In fact, it feels weird. It feels really strange. It's not like Emerald Weapon, which is just lurking in the depths, right? Or that mystery of approaching an area in an open world game where the ground is rumbling or something along those lines. Like, oh, this is going to be something later on that we're going to have to deal with. It's not like that. You just enter an area. It's like, oh, this is just a giant circle in the middle of nowhere. This is going to be a boss arena. So exploration... pointless for the most part because the game will send you there regardless later on, and the resources you get for exploring every nook and cranny are not particularly worthwhile. Occasionally dropping like 2 gil when you have like 100 plus 140,000 gil, it's like 2 gil. Okay, that's the way it's going to be. Coming to the bounty system a little bit more specifically then. So I was very excited about the bounty system. It started off as C-rank enemies, which is what you'd expect, some nice basic enemies, and you got to fight them out there, and they were cool boss fights. I actually really enjoyed this, and I was looking forward to more unlocking. But again, the pacing went off the rails. So I did every bounty as they opened up, and that was fine, and then it got to, like, unlocking more after a certain part of the story, and it gave me everything from S and more C ranks. And it's just... what? So we have S rank, which is by far the hardest thing we've faced so far. And you're also giving me C ranks alongside that. It gave me like 2 C's, a B, an A, and an S. But we've already done like 5 B's and 5 C's at this point. Like, what are we doing here? Like, shouldn't it just be steadily upgrading if I've done the rest instead of giving me these other ones? And it looks to me like they tried to walk a very fine line between making the game ultra accessible, because they want you to, again, coming back to the core, they want you to go along for this ride that they've crafted, and they need everybody to get through it. So they've done that by making sure that there's a lot of very, very easy content that you can do. And of course, I'm aware New Game Plus is going to be the hard mode. And they give you the items to make things pretty much play themselves, if that was your choice. And you have the choice of story mode, while still trying to keep some challenge in for players who want a little bit more out of the game. So it's like trying to balance this thing, and it comes across really weird and really strange that you're getting like, oh, this is like a really hard boss, but at the same time, we're going to give you this really easy one if you want to go and do that instead. Woo! S-rank done, baby! To make that work, which then leads us into the Renown system. So the Renown system is just, as you do side quests and bounties, you'll get an extra resource called Renown. It's just a flat number. And this number raises, and occasionally they have an entire NPC dedicated for you just receiving rewards because you crossed a certain threshold of number. So it's like, oh, you get some resource at 50. You'll get some at 200. You'll get some at 300, and so on and so forth. And these resources, 9 out of 10 times, are just more crafting materials that you don't want and you don't need. And it's like, this is kind of a drag because it's not exciting. And that's the bit that's missing. Like, the gearing's not exciting. The Renown system's not exciting. The bounty system is exciting when you get good bosses. But if you do the good ones, then everything else is so trivially easy, it doesn't matter. And it's kind of like it's taking up space. And then the Renown system occasionally pays out well. Like, you'll get some really... like 1 in 5 gives you something kind of nice, but you don't know you're going to get it. And then the rest of the stuff is just filler stuff. And it feels very tacked on. The same could be said about the side quests. And I think this is going to be a big thing when I finish playing, to talk about... to see what people's reaction is to this, because I'm obviously basing it on mine. Is the side quests... I would like... If I'm being generous, I say they're hit or miss. But the vast majority of them miss. And this is one of those things I can see, and I was talking about this yesterday, is that I see forum people who are like very staunch defenders of a game. You know, we know those people exist. Will argue that the 1 or 2 exceptional side quests are the reason the side quest system is good. And that's really disingenuous. It's super disingenuous. Because undeniably, there are a couple of side quests in this game which are fantastic. They're so good. However, there's way more which are completely a waste of your time. And the story, I initially, my first video, I was like, oh, the side quests add a bit of world building. They do. They absolutely do. They do a little bit of world building. They flesh out the world even more than they've already done. But gameplay-wise, and what that world building is often just like, this is kind of a drag. To the point where there's some times where I see all the side quests pop up and I'm like, it might be fantastic. And they've hooked you because it might be great. It might be, because there are definitely 1 or 2. In fact, there's at least 3. I'll be honest. There's at least 3 which are tremendously good. But that's probably out of the 20 to 30. And it's the other ones are like, And again, it feels kind of tacked on to... we need side quests. Final Fantasy's got to have side quests. Whereas maybe they could have been built into the main story as context saying. And it's actually a little bit of Final Fantasy XIV showing through, which in an MMO, okay. Single player game, not so much. You know, not so much. We're here for a ride. We're going on a certain way. And the same could be said for the music thing, which has become a personal bugbear of mine. Is one of the collectors is to collect the music, similar to what you had in Final Fantasy VII Remake. And for some obscure reason, they decided to make the music that you acquire from vendors extraordinarily expensive. So if you're doing everything and you're exploring, you might end up at certain points in the game with like 10,000 gil. And then you'll find a vendor that sells a song for 80,000 gil. Buy some crafting materials. We're so poor, dude. And you're like, what the hell? And it's clearly designed to be acquired in New Game Plus. That's what it's for. And ordinarily, I'd be fine with that. It's, you know, this is like Fat Chocobo and things like that. It's like, it's for something you to do on a repeat playthrough. It just seems an odd choice to choose music, which is playing in an area that you're always in, where you might want to vary that up in some way and have some fun with it, and maybe get some reactions from the players. But you can't. You can acquire some tracks naturally by finding them in boxes and things like that, but overall, it seems like an odd choice to make the music, which is something you want to play with in an area you're in all the time, something that's for New Game Plus. So, yeah, that's a bit of a bugbear to me. But that's where I'm at right now, right? Yeah, these things, I do have a big problem with them. I do. Like, the gearing system I want to care about. I really enjoyed... if you've watched any of our FF7 remake, or in fact, any of the Final Fantasy games we played so far on the VODs, I'm going to do full proper reviews on the channel. Gearing is a big part of it. If I come up against a challenge, I'll sit down, I'll go through all my materia, I'll make sure that every character is kind of optimal for this occasion, and I might swap stats. I might boost somebody because they're my magic user, so I might put, say, Espers onto that character in order to make sure that their magic stat is getting boosted. And then I can focus that character, and then I care about that character. I've invested into them. I've put resources into them, and I feel happy when I get that sorted. And I can't do that here, because the gearing is designed to make you as powerful as you should be to not smack the boss into the floor. And I do understand that. And that's what this time gating process is. They want you to be a certain level of power so that the massive, bombastic, spectacle fighters they've created are the way they're supposed to be, and you don't just go in and 3 or 4 hit them because you're a farmer and you've just farmed everything under the sun and you know where the hidden ribbon is and things like that. You know you can get Ultima or Flare by going this way and doing that kind of thing, or you can make some characters super stacked and overpowered, and that will change the dynamic of the game because the main focus is this very crafted narrative, which is exceptional. It's really, really good. So I don't want this to come across as too negative, but I had to explain my negative thoughts on those individual things. Because, like I said, I believe it looks to me like 90% of the resource weighted into the MSQ and the combat, which are both fantastic. And then they were like, hey, we also need X, Y, and Z to make this an FF game. And it shows. Like, they just don't quite go far enough. At least that's where it is now. Now, the side quests are getting longer. It doesn't necessarily mean better. But as we move towards the end game, maybe that will change. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see where we're at. And after I've finished playing, I'll come back and see the comments and see what people were thinking at the same time. Maybe I'm way off base. It's just my thoughts. All right. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you soon. Bye, guys.